Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today I'm bringing you guys an update on SolarWinds. It's been 8 days since my last video, and this is the breach that has launched 1,000 other breaches. This is crazy, from just the companies that and organizations that are reporting to other vulnerabilities that have been found, and on and on and on. Now, the last video I did was on the 22nd of December, and I am basically picking up where that left off. If you want a comprehensive timeline from basically when the bomb dropped with FireEye all the way to the 22nd, I really recommend you look at that video. My last one was on the 16th that had even more information. This video, though, and podcast, obviously, is going to be a slideshow that brings you up to date from around the 22nd, just a little before then, because obviously information is coming out fast and furious. And so with that, let's get moving here and talk about the latest updates since the last video. Now, on the 18th of December on Friday, because obviously I missed that one in the last one, essentially the Sunburst threat actors, we are calling this vulnerability Sunburst, that's what FireEye has identified them as. Basically, we found out that they actually conducted a dry run test of their vulnerability before going live with it. It is believed to have been in late 2019. This is according to Yahoo News. So they were in SolarWinds basically preparing, getting their telemetry ready, testing out their software before they let the bomb drop and started infecting all of SolarWinds Orion clients. SolarWinds claims 18,000 out of their 33 or so thousand customers that had Orion were affected, but we're starting to believe it's going to be more than what their SEC disclosures said. More information on that soon. On Monday, the 21st of December, Palo Alto Networks, as well as Symantec and GuidePoint, reported that threat actors were basically planting malicious code. On top of Sunburst, they were planting malicious code in .NET libraries that were attached to SolarWinds. This was creating essentially another form of access into the infrastructure, and this was labeled Supernova by Palo Alto Networks. And so obviously we now have another vulnerability attached to the original Sunburst Orion vulnerability, so it keeps getting worse. On the 22nd of December, NERC, the North American Electric Reliability Corp, this is essentially a regulatory authority that is jointly between US and Canada for essentially the electrical industry, said that there was no evidence of tampering, but that Orion is used in the electrical industry. And so investigation continue, which lead us to the 23rd, because the CISA, the cybersecurity wing of the Department of Homeland Security, said that state and local governments were being targeted by this breach, according to NPR. And then essentially on Wednesday, the 23rd as well, investigators say that the attackers took too much risk when they were basically putting this out there and disseminating it to the world and activating it to basically run their surveillance or steal whatever it is they wanted to steal. And so they essentially created an unforced error, according to a report by CNN, which essentially led to their discovery by FireEye. Now, moving on basically Christmas Eve, the 24th of December, to quote The Intercept, SolarWinds software has also infected more than a dozen critical infrastructure companies in the electric, oil, and manufacturing industries who are also running this software. So NERC coming out a couple of days before saying, yes, we know it's being run, but we don't see any evidence of tampering. The Intercept is reporting otherwise just a few days after that. This is an always evolving situation. It's kind of crazy. Also, on Christmas Eve, CrowdStrike stated that they were targeted for a 17-hour period several months ago, and that they were able to thwart the attackers. The attackers were unsuccessful penetrating CrowdStrike's defenses and perimeters. And so what this has suggested, according to multiple sources, but obviously I'm cribbing this one from Engadget, is that the net that was cast by these attackers appears to be much more wide than what was previously and originally assumed. So obviously, when we were talking about those 18,000 companies that were disclosed by SolarWinds in their SEC disclosure, which I read and was very limited. I could probably do a video on how not to do an SEC disclosure or how not to be transparent, because that was a really bad, I think, personally, I think that was a bad disclosure by SolarWinds to the SEC. CrowdStrike basically puts a whole bunch of more companies on the table compared to the 18,000 that they estimate were disclosed, which is why we're thinking it's going to be those 33,000 in total, I believe was the number for Orion. Moving forward to Tuesday, excuse me, the 29th of December, Microsoft got into the fray here because they believe the attacker's final motive was to quote, use the backdoor access to steal credentials, escalate privileges, and move laterally to gain the ability to create valid SAML tokens, essentially in order to access cloud assets or on-premise equipment. This is according to Microsoft's blog post as they continue to investigate this. So now we are starting to identify not just the vulnerability, but how this vulnerability was being used as it was getting inserted into the corporations, governments, and organizations of the world. This is obviously very crazy. Now, on Wednesday, the 30th of December, the day I am talking to you here, the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, that is the tax collecting body for the United States government, stated that taxpayer data was not exposed. And they said this just recently, a couple hours ago, during a Senate Finance Committee meeting that basically was discussing SolarWinds, and the head or the Inspector General of the IRS was the one who stated that, according to Accounting Today. And looking to the future, less than 24 hours from now, tomorrow, New Year's Eve, the 31st of December, the CISA, again, that's the cybersecurity wing of the Department of Homeland Security, that is their deadline for their order that all federal agencies either have to completely update or remove SolarWinds from their infrastructures. If you are a federal agency and you haven't done that, there's going to be ramifications given the level of severity for cybersecurity that this is for the federal government. So that is a huge issue. Now, in the last video that I did on the 22nd, I had a list of companies that we knew, or organizations we knew, that were targeted directly. The one on the 16th was also another list of those that were either targeted or we suspect were targeted. The one here is brand new. Not a single one of these was on my list previously, and these are a drop in the bucket. If we are looking at 18, I found others on the list as well, including state governments like Michigan and others. Nevada I reported on last week. But if you're looking at this, the U.S. Department of Defense, we knew they were running Orion. Now we have confirmation that they were indeed targeted. And these go around the world. The ITPS data center in England is another one. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security, now we know, was directly targeted. Health and Human Services, Energy, Pima County in Arizona, the State Department, which again, we knew was running Orion. Now we have confirmation thanks to CRN. VMware, which might have actually had their own vulnerability that allowed SolarWinds to move laterally across networks. VMware has apparently been affected by this as well, and on and on and on. This is absolutely crazy, but we are going to continue to see disclosures. You thought the Blackbaud, especially if you've been watching or listening to me, my breaches of the week every Sunday, the video and the podcast, you know I've been talking about Blackbaud for months as various organizations basically said, hey, they got our personal information hit. Now we have entire federal agencies around the globe and massive corporations saying they got into everything. This makes Blackbaud look like kindergarten, and I bet Blackbaud is thrilled that this happened, not because they're thrilled the data breach happened, but now they're off the radar because now they're the #2 largest breach because SolarWinds dwarfs them by far. And to reiterate, SolarWinds public infrastructure password was SolarWinds123. Anybody could have logged into this. They were warned about this, according to Business Insider, in 2019 and did nothing. They went through a cybersecurity audit, and basically this was told to them that this was a problem for them, and they didn't fix it. And now we are looking at virtually every government on the planet with a very serious problem, thanks to APT-29, aka Cozy Bear, aka Russian intelligence known as the SVR. SolarWinds123. That is fast and loose, and that is completely unacceptable. And I mentioned that in my last one, and I will keep reiterating, this is why we have multi-factor authentication. This is why we have identity management. And this is why we have password policies that include 4 character sets and something more complex than all lowercase SolarWinds123. And so that is your update right now. Obviously, this is an ever-evolving situation. I have more technical detail, but I want you guys to stay tuned because I'm going to be doing a comprehensive video that incorporates absolutely everything from my first 2 videos, this video, plus new information as the dust settles and we essentially have discovered all that we're going to discover, except for those organizations that have been hit. I'm going to basically put together probably a half hour to a 45-minute video laying all of this out in terms of what these infections or these vulnerabilities have actually done, the other vulnerabilities we found, such as that .NET library and VMware and other things. And I'm going to lay all of this out, plus those massive organizations and governments we know that were hit. So stay tuned for that. That will be in 2021 in January at some point, but I will keep monitoring this so you don't have to. So stick around. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.